Thank you very much. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue. C'est un plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. I would like to just begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples. It is great to be here alongside my friend and counterpart, Minister Smith from Ontario, with whom I seem to be sharing the stage a lot these last couple of weeks. Also pleased certainly to be joined by Lesley Gallinger for this conversation. I would like to thank Lesley and her team here for the invitation to come to the facility and for the critical work they do each and every day on behalf of Ontarians. Certainly you folks have a very critical job. You can see some of that just on the screens beside us in terms of managing the electricity system and ensuring that there is a reliable source of electricity for the 15 million plus Ontarians on a day-to-day basis, but also in terms of planning for the long-term requirements on the electricity side. As Ontarians start to, in increasing numbers, plug in electric vehicles, ride electrified public transit, switch to electric heat pumps in their homes, and as Ontario businesses move towards electrification as a way to reduce their own carbon emissions, we need more clean power. And we need that fast. En fait, des analyses crédibles indiquent que nos systèmes électriques devront être 2 à 3 fois plus grands qu'aujourd'hui pour répondre à l'augmentation significative de la demande qui accompagnera la transformation énergétique mondiale. And clean electricity isn't just a necessity because of rising demand. Increasingly, businesses are making access to clean electricity as a prerequisite for investment in this province and in other provinces and territories in this country. Certainly the success that Ontario has enjoyed with respect to battery manufacturing and electric vehicle manufacturing is a good proof point of that. Volkswagen picked Canada over the United States to build their EV gigafactory in large part, because of this province's low carbon electricity grid. Cependant, nous ne pouvons pas nous reposer sur nos lauriers. Building a grid that is 2 or 3 times larger than it is today is a huge undertaking. It also has to be a grid that is affordable for consumers and businesses. It has to be reliable over the course of the weeks and months all through the year. And it has to be clean, increasingly has to be clean. This is such a monumental task. I often say to folks, I actually think this is the biggest task facing us going forward. And in fact, it is kind of our century's equivalent of building the railways across this country. It is something that is such a monumental task that it's not something I think that any province and territory is likely to be able to accomplish on their own, that collaboration between levels of government is extremely important. And in that regard, we have endeavored to work very collaboratively with the Government of Ontario in a number of ways to assist it in its aspirations with respect to the electricity grid. Just last week, we announced together, Todd and I, $50 million in federal funding through our electricity pre-development program for prep work to support Bruce Power in assessing up to 4,800 megawatts of new nuclear generation. We invested through the Canada Infrastructure Bank $1 billion in supporting the work that is being done at the Darlington facility, which is an enormously important demonstration of small modular reactor technology, something that I will tell you everywhere I go in the world, people ask me about, and the eyes of the world are on Darlington. We have introduced a clean electricity grid, clean electricity ITC, which was announced in last year's budget and will be formalized this fall, which provides a 15% refundable tax credit for investments in all forms of clean electricity generation across the country. That certainly includes nuclear, including refurbishments. Cela comprend l'éolien, le solaire, l'hydroélectricité, le nucléaire et le gaz aux émissions réduites, ainsi que le stockage et le transmission de l'énergie. Our $4.5 billion Smart Renewables and Electrification Pathways Program, or SREPs as folks call it, that is housed in my department, funds clean energy and grid modernization projects to ensure that all Canadians have access to clean, reliable, affordable, and abundant electricity now and for decades to come. And today I am pleased to announce the latest SREP investment. Today the federal government is investing $16.7 million in IESO's Enabling Resources Program, recognizing that the grid of tomorrow will involve a higher concentration of intermittent power sources, a greater reliance on energy storage, and more decentralized distributed energy resources, this investment will enable the IESO to develop new electricity market rules, operational processes, and IT solutions that are necessary for the efficient and reliable operation of Ontario's electricity system in the coming years. Today's investment, as I understand it, will allow Ontario to support the expansion of both small and grid-scale renewable energy, along with expanded energy storage capacity, which means lower greenhouse gas emissions and a more reliable electricity system and ultimately lower costs for Ontario residents. Cet investissement offrira également aux promoteurs, aux entreprises et de services énergétiques, aux consommateurs d'électricité et aux communautés autochtones de nouvelles possibilités de participer au réseau électrique de l'Ontario. And it certainly, I think, will also help Ontario in terms of positioning it to meet the requirements of the clean electricity regs, which are an ongoing series of conversations between federal government in Ontario and other provinces and territories in this country. Today's announcement, building on what is being accomplished at Darlington with Bruce Power, and through our collaborative work at the Ontario-Canada Energy and Resource Table, is another example of what is possible when we commit to working together towards common goals and finding real solutions that address climate change and create economic opportunity. It is another step towards strengthening Ontario's clean electricity advantage and building a cleaner, greener, and more prosperous future for Ontario residents. With that, I want to congratulate this organization on their continued leadership and vision, and I certainly want to thank Minister Smith once again for his ongoing partnership and collaboration. Thank you very much for joining us today. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Minister. We are so grateful for your support. I'd now like to invite Todd Smith, our Ontario Minister of Energy, to make remarks.
Thanks very much, Carla. Welcome to the IESO headquarters, Jonathan, and thanks for your collaboration as well. This is the central nervous system for our electricity grid, and looking forward to taking you for a bit of a tour. We had the Premier here about a month ago for his first visit to the IESO. He was blown away by the expertise that exists within these walls, and learned a lot about how our electricity system works, not just for Ontarians, but for Canada and for large parts of North America as well. The electrons that are generated here in Ontario can make their way all the way to Florida, and the Premier was pretty blown away by that fact. So this is an integral part of making sure that we have stable, reliable electricity, not just for Ontario, but for North America as well. So thanks again. It's great to be back on a stage with you and making an announcement like this one today, and it's great to be joined once again by my colleague, Stéphane Sarrazin, the Parliamentary Assistant for the Ministry of Energy, and the great representative for the riding of Glengarry, Prescott, Russell, where the sun rises on Ontario in the Far East. Listen, the folks that are in this building, they are the experts when it comes to the inner workings of Ontario's grid. And before I do get started, I just want to thank them for all of the work that they do in managing the grid every day, but also planning for the future. The work that's happening here really is so critical to ensuring that we're prepared to meet the demands of a growing province and a growing population and a growing economy. And there's a lot of work ahead in that space. Because over the past 5 years, our government's worked to make Ontario the best place to create jobs and build the industries of the future. And just like the EV automotive sector that Minister Wilkinson mentioned, in 2019, Reuters reported that companies plan to spend $300 billion globally in the EV sector, but none of it was slated for Ontario. And today, just 4 years later, we're quickly becoming a leader in building EVs and batteries with the help of historic investments that have been supported both by the province and the federal governments. That's what working together can do. Over the last 3 years alone, Ontario has attracted over $28 billion in automotive investments. But it doesn't stop there. As our economy continues to grow, so does our population. Ontario is on pace to welcome more than 5 million people over the next decade. Think about that for a minute. It's 5 million, actually. 15 million. We're going to be 20 million by the end of the next decade. It's quite a remarkable thing. So that's why we have a plan to build 1.5 million new homes by 2031 to help meet that rising demand. And with all that growth is going to come increased demand for energy resources as well. Luckily, Ontario already is home to one of the cleanest electricity grids in the entire world, and one of the most resilient, in part thanks to the diversity of the energy supply that we do have in this province. Under our plan to power Ontario's growth, which I released last summer, we've taken a pragmatic approach, one that leverages every part of our energy sector to support our growth. Minister Wilkinson talked about expanding our nuclear resources. We're also talking about expanding our hydroelectric, our natural gas, and our renewable resources as well. But we're also leveraging new technologies like battery energy storage and distributed energy resources that we're talking about here today to help meet that rising demand. In fact, as we speak, our government has the largest clean energy procurement in Canada's history underway. And this procurement is going to secure at least 2,500 megawatts of battery storage, which will support the operation of Ontario's clean electricity grid by drawing and storing electricity at off-peak when power demand is low, and then returning that power to the system at times of higher electricity demand. And that represents enough energy storage to keep the lights on for 2.5 million homes during those peaks. And during the hot weather, we experience our peaks in the summertime when we're using a lot of air conditioning, and it will be available over a 4-hour period. But integrating these new technologies into our grid is going to take some work, and that's why we're here today. That's what the Independent Electricity System Operator has done to create an Enabling Resources program, specifically to make it easier for these new technologies to play a role in Ontario's grid. And today, this investment of almost $17 million by Minister Wilkinson is going to help accelerate that work so that we can take full advantage of the opportunities provided by energy storage and other small-scale electricity resources. Even something as simple as providing the folks in the IESO control room with the real-time data on the state of charge of the new battery storage projects that we're building across the province will help make the system work that much better. So, Minister, I'm really pleased to receive this funding. I told you if you were in town, I'd always be there to put a smile on my face and say thank you, and here we are again at the IESO Control Center. And I do want to thank you for your collaboration over the last couple of years that we've been working together. You know, as we continue to implement our plan to power Ontario's growth, I hope that we have many more of these types of announcements in our province with you and I smiling and shaking hands at the end of those announcements. So thanks again for being here in Ontario today. It was a great day at the Canadian Nuclear Association conference last Thursday with the $50 million announcement for the pre-development work for those 4.8 gigs at Bruce Power. And we really welcome your installment here for the IESO today. So thanks very much. And am I turning it over to Lesley, or do you want to do that? Okay.
Thank you. Great.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Minister. And I would now like to invite our President and CEO, Lesley Gallinger, to the podium to speak to the importance of today's announcement to our organization and our shared energy future. So welcome, Lesley.
Thank you, everybody. Not an easy spot batting cleanup after two such well-spoken ministers. So thank you, Minister Smith. Minister Wilkinson, thank you for coming. In my capacity on Canada's Electricity Advisory Council, I've certainly had the privilege of working with you and your team to determine what's needed to decarbonize and grow Canada's electricity grid. And it's so great to be able to bring you here today to the heart of our grid operations to see how this will unfold in Ontario. The IESO has put a significant effort into developing pathways for smaller and non-emitting resources to integrate into our grid. And we've worked with customers, we've worked with aggregators and utilities, along with solutions providers to unlock that potential, the potential of new clean resources to meet our grid's needs. Our Enabling Resources program will open up new models for emerging resources such as storage, hybrid facilities that have both a renewable and a generation capacity on them, storage on site, and smaller also community-based resources to participate in Ontario's electricity markets. We believe this program is critical to increasing competition, to driving down costs and also contributing to safe, reliable power on Ontario's grid. And we've made significant progress. Our work to date has given us the confidence to move ahead to procure over 2,500 megawatts of battery energy storage, some of which will come online next year. Once these batteries are connected, our control room operators will have more options to choose from to keep our system reliable. We will also be able to extract more value from our wind and solar generation capacity on the grid. And this can't be overlooked. As Ontario's electricity grid expands to meet growing demand, we must be mindful of maintaining system flexibility that strikes that balance between affordability, reliability, and sustainability. And storage is just the start for us. The Enabling Resources program will also help unlock the potential of small-scale, locally based projects that are emerging in communities around the province. We're talking about more renewables and storage, but also talking about the flexibility, building that into the way we consume electricity to contribute to that balance and flexibility. This funding from NRCan will unlock the potential of these resources even further. It will give us the real-time data on state of charge for battery energy storage facilities, so we know exactly how much stored energy is available at any given moment. It will enable smaller resources to be aggregated from across municipalities, improving efficiency and reliability. And it will allow supply as small as 100 kilowatts, such as a solar array you might see on a factory roof, to participate directly in our system. For us, this is important work and it is game-changing and underscores the critical importance of the diversity of our supply mix. So Minister Wilkinson, thank you. Thank you again for your support. The value that we will derive from this investment will pay significant benefits for decades to come. Thank you all for coming.
Very good. So thank you, Lesley, and thank you again to Minister Wilkinson, Minister Smith, Parliamentary Assistant Sarah Zan for joining us here today, and also for supporting the important work we're doing. Exploring new and innovative ways of meeting our growing energy needs is going to be critical in the years ahead. It's great to see that we have media presence here today, so we're going to open up the floor to any questions, to be followed by a brief photo op in front of the window here with our control center as the backdrop. So I'm going to ask Carolyn Sponkin to the podium to facilitate any questions.
Thank you very much. I will stick here and leave the podium for you folks. Sure. But as mentioned, we'll now move to the media Q&A portion of the event. Any journalists are able to ask questions. And before you do so, please just say your name, what outlet you're reporting for, and who your question is directed to. Are there any questions in the room? All right. Seeing none, we will move to the photo op. Thank you very much.